This is Leighton's D-28. I just installed a K&K system in there. This is the original saddle. These were the values we were faced with. The low E was 4 cents flat. It needed to come forward. So I've marked this. I am doing a cantilevered compensated bridge saddle. I'm not making this up. The A string was 4 cents flat, so we're talking about the 7th fret note and its corresponding octave, all the way across all 6 strings. These are the values we're discussing here. So 4 cents flat, that's how much that needed to come forward. The A, same thing. It was almost right at the leading edge of the existing saddle, so now it's gone beyond the confines of the original slot in the bridge. The D string was 8 cents flat, so I'm bringing it right to the leading edge of this cantilevered compensated blank. The G string was 6 cents flat, and if you look here, you can see it's pretty well right at the front. There's the original saddle. I'm moving it just back from the extreme edge, so the D is actually a little bit further forward than the G. The B was 4 cents flat, and it was at the back of the original saddle, so it will probably fall within the confines of the original bridge slot, but we still need this compensated cantilevered saddle to get all 6 strings perfectly in tune. Okay, high E string basically falls in the center of the original saddle, so I'm kind of erring on the side of caution and bringing it maybe even a little bit past the footprint of the original slot. So this is what I'm about to cut. I've already determined the action height and the curvature. So now I'm just going to cut these values, and I do this on this new disc sander. Let me bring you in for a closer look. Two more things I'm doing. I'm taking off that sharp back edge. And I am taking the face, the leading edge, I'm taking it down on the edge of the... Here's where we are at this point. I'm going to come back to this in the morning. It's very close. You can see the original saddle and then the values on the compensated cantilevered saddle. Very close, but not quite there yet. And we still have the compensated nut to do. So the next step, before we go any further with the intonation, is to take care of this proverbial neck to body junction. So where the neck joins the body, you have your dovetail, you have the sides, the back, the top, the head block, the fingerboard, and the fingerboard extension all kind of meet there in a clump. So it's not that this actually swells up, but what happens is everything else moves. The neck flexes. You can see on this body it's even dishing in a little bit. It's moving around. But this actual intersection of the neck to body junction doesn't budge. So over time, and not necessarily a lot of time, even brand new guitars, you get this sort of high spot. Now we have honed in on the intonation, as you saw earlier in the video. We're very close, but before we even bother with the bridge, we're going to take care of this area first. And I want to speak specifically about the file I use and exactly how we address these frets and what you need to pay attention to when you pull out a file to work on frets. Even though these strings are fairly fresh, they've been tightened and loosened so many times that we'll put a fresh set on anyway, once we're done all the final tweaking on the intonation. So for now, I'm leaving the strings on the guitar while we take care of the high spots here. I've slipped that heavy vinyl fret guard into place so that we don't scratch the beautiful top on this guitar. I send out a half a dozen of these blanks that you can cut to whatever shape, most popular guitars you're working on, Tellys, Strats, Les Pauls, etc. Of course, this guard has been cut out for the Dreadnought shape. I want to reiterate again about the length of the file and the width of the file. On the tooling surface of the file, the contact point is like the width of a pencil line. So as soon as you do this in a straight line, you've just flattened out the frets and disrupted the radius. You need to crosshatch. Even though the worst high spot is here, I don't file that down. I still move obliquely, very lightly, like this, to work that down. Been doing this for half a century, so like anybody that's practiced at any form of art, it always looks easy when they do it. And if you pay attention to detail, it is pretty easy. So if you find that the file is tipping, you're doing something wrong. You can see that I've got my index finger and I'm kind of pointing the way. So again, I have to mention this again. I've mentioned it so many times that you need to follow the trajectory of the string path. So the strings actually kind of spread out slightly, right, from side to side. So I'm trying to keep that in mind. As long as I keep this file in line with the string path, I'm good. What you don't want to do is tilt the file off of the trajectory of the string path, because then you're in trouble. You don't want to tilt it this way, you don't want to tilt it that way. You want to keep it nice steady stroke. And you saw me rocking the short straight edge a minute ago. Well, I'm going to check it again and see how we do. We'll get that straight edge again, see what we got. Still rocking here just a little bit. That's good. This is good. Okay, we are very close. Just here that we're still getting a little bit of rocking. So just because it's rocking here, I don't do this on that one spot or you disrupt the radius of the frets. I still move obliquely, keeping that high spot in mind, and cross-hatching, sort of coming back in the opposite direction. Or as one subscriber recently mentioned, an X pattern. It's not really an X pattern. That makes me think of sort of tilting the file, but I guess it's an X pattern if you want to call it that. Call it whatever you want, but just keep in mind that we're moving along the same trajectory as the string path. Let's check it again. It's still rocking a little bit. This is the culprit, right where the neck joins the body, 14th fret. Again, I don't file that one spot down. I move obliquely on an angle like that, keeping the file in line with the trajectory of the string path. I remember seeing some of the students show up with a file about this long and an inch wide, double cut, very rough pattern. The wider the file, the more difficulty you're going to have. So when one of my students had mentioned that the file was tipping, I thought, okay, I need to address this. The file should never tip. Okay, I think we're just about there. Let's check it again. So here's a shorter straight edge. So all I'm seeing now is just a little bit of a high spot here. This is good. We got that. We got that. So we are golden all the way across. So I'm taking the time to actually show you this so you understand clearly all of the tools that you've got in your kit. Of course, this is one of the 6 straight edges you get. And how you use those tools. Here's our last little bit. Again, even though the high spot is here, I'm not filing like this. I'm still moving obliquely. The other way. And as you get better and better at doing this work, you'll start to realize that the sound of the file will change when the resistance decreases and you've reached your goal. And I think that's the case here. Let's check that one more time. So now we know this is completely level. Now that we have got the frets level along the string path, now we need to take out that sharpness with the crowning file. Another popular misconception about the crowning file: if you're using it right, you should never touch the center of the crown. What I'm doing is I'm reducing that squareness on the crown of the fret and coaxing the fret back to center. Now, because I'm working over the body, I'm working from the highest part of the radius outward, and then I'll come around the other side to do this side of the fret. So just working from the center to the treble side. And you can see we gradually reduce the tooling swath of the file. I don't know if the camera is picking this up, I hope it is. You can see how square these frets are. A second ago, these frets here, these 4 frets, look just like this one. I'll work that down, and again, don't touch the center of the crown. We're just kind of coaxing that so that we end up with a tooling swath at the center of the crown about the size of a thick pencil line. Again, starting at the highest part of the radius and working outward. You can see why we have our fret guards on. I send out 6 of these blanks in your kits. Work that next one. Chase that back to center. Don't touch the center of the crown. Good, that's looking good. And the last fret. Okay, I'm going to switch the camera around. Come around the other side. I'm hoping that the camera picks this up, but you can see how square all these crowns are. The treble side is done. Now I've come around to the treble side. I'm starting from the highest part of the radius on the fret and working towards the outside base portion of the fingerboard. So again, I'm going to start up here, get rid of that squareness, being careful not to touch the center of the crown. You can see that being reduced very quickly to the width of a thick pencil line. From when I started this operation, from the beginning up to this point, we did not disrupt the natural radius of the fingerboard because we moved obliquely across that radius, maintaining it as we go. I can see why the industry has kind of gone bananas and have spent untold millions of dollars on developing a CNC machine to do this. I was reading on Facebook, one of my newly acquired friends is TJ Thompson, who is obviously the definitive Martin restoration guy, an amazing artist. And one of his customers had mentioned on a post that I guess TJ has one of these CNC machines and he's quite excited about it. One of his customers had mentioned on his post that since TJ got this CNC machine, he thought, I'm going to bring my guitar in and get TJ to pluck it. And then when TJ set it up and went to do the work, the guy mentioned in the post that it didn't need any work. And he had said that I guess TJ had out-plecked the pleck machine. I actually burst out laughing when I read that because I've been the voice of the wilderness on this issue for years. Respect the radius of the fingerboard while the frets are being leveled. On to the next stage. This is now done, so the frets are leveled. We've recrowned. Now we're going to do the last little bit and scrub those crowns back to center and buff and polish, and then we'll get on with the final intonation on that compensated saddle. Now I know that all of you Patcheron guys have been watching my channel for quite a while now. I want to do a bit of a different take on this. I'm going to leave the camera focused on the frets so you can see where we are at this point. Frets are leveled, we've recrowned. Now I've got the scrub blocks that are, once again, in your kits. So when I move across the frets with a scrub block, we're going to call this the heel, and we're going to call that the toe. The little pencil line of tooling swath left from the file, when you push with the heel, this side of the fret is being coaxed back to center. When I turn the block like this and pull with the toe, and the toe addresses the far side of the fret, scrubbing it back to center. So the block is covered with that flexible vinyl, and it naturally slurs over those frets and scrubs them back to center. Thus the term scrub block. This is the 400 grit, first pass. Of course, I'm kind of taking my time to explain this, so I would have been done by now. But so there's our first pass. So you can see that those tooling marks are pretty well gone. That first run of 400 pretty well took care of it. So I'm slipping the paper along the block and going over it with 400 again. Okay, there's our 400. Now I've got the paper stacked on the block. This is our 600. You can tell just by the sound that we're getting much closer. There's our 600. One pass with 600. I'm going to do a second pass with 600 before we jump up to the final grit. Now we've got our emery paper. So you can see the progression. When I look at the original frets, first 5 frets, these have even a finer sheen than the original frets. But we're not done yet. So next I take the 4-0 steel wool and just brush along these frets before we use our buffer. Yeah, that's looking good. Very happy with that. So I've got my die grinder here with the canvas wheel. I'm loading it up with compound Jeweler's Rouge. You get that at any automotive store. I think this was like $5. I got it at Princess Auto here in Canada. But any automotive or body shop supply will have a similar type of compound in a brick like that. I'm not going perpendicular and I'm not in line with the frets. I'm also on that sort of 45-degree angle. And that is the finished fret level, recrown, and polish. Now we can get on with the rest of the job. So put a little tick on either side of each string so we know where the focal point is to adjust this intonation. Now the rest of this is going to be done by hand. Got my little knuckle vise that I got at the surplus store. I think it was $18. I think they've gone up to about $22. I got 6 of these things. Use them all the time. Okay, so first thing I'm doing is I'm putting the pencil on its side like this, and I'm just rubbing a topographic pattern into the saddle. It shows the highest spot. This is an auger file, very fine single cut auger file. And Lee Valley actually has these. I think they're, I can't remember, $13, $16 or something. And I'm just making sure that we've really chased everything to the leading edge. We're going to put this in the guitar again in a second and do another intonation check to verify. I'm relieving the back of the saddle to guarantee that all of the strings come right to this leading edge all the way across. Okay, back to the guitar. So this is where we ended up with this compensated cantilevered saddle. We have our tuner set up for a reality check, and we're ready for the final intonation test. Okay, we haven't done the compensated nut yet, we've just done the bridge. We've got the second string, the third string, and the fifth string that we need to nudge back from that leading edge a little tiny bit. Just a couple of strokes of that auger file. Moment of truth. So before we do the compensated nut, I'm going to go across and play all fretted 12th fret notes and open. I'll come back after the compensated nut is done and we'll do that same check again. The last thing I want to check is the open string. Now I'm actually going to tune that open string. And the fretted 1st fret note. Okay, 4 cents sharp. It's not too bad, 2 cents. That's 5 cents sharp. And 1st fret. Okay, we'll come back after the compensated nut and do that same tuning check again. There's a whole lot more geometry going on with this type of compensated nut on a Martin guitar. So I've got 2 pencils sharpened like a hypodermic needle. All the values are cut in this one, but yeah, we want these pencil lines to be super precise. I'm changing pencils as I go here just to make sure that we get a good sharp line. The actual seat of the saddle is canted slightly. Like I said, a lot more geometry going on with this type of nut. But we're there. All the values are cut and it is perfectly in tune. You can see clearly that the B string and the low E are the only 2 strings that really fell within the confines of the original slot in the bridge. Everything else was cantilevered. The A string moved forward, D forward, G forward, and even the high E moved just slightly beyond the footprint of the original slot. So this all sounds fine and well, but there's nothing like checking with the tuner. Let's see how accurate we got it. Approaching the moment of truth now. I just kind of brush the excess wax off there. Another quick wipe. Back to the tuner. Let's see what we got. 7th octave, 12th, open, and 1st fret. Same deal all the way across. as always, the acid test is just play the guitar and maybe layer a few chords, etc., etc. So this is the progression I've looped. By the way, that's our final compensated nut. And that is the final compensated cantilevered bridge saddle. So we'll let that loop play. There's nothing quite like overlaying different inversions of the same chord, superimposing them. And that's what I'm going to do right now. So we'll let that play, and I'm going to do different inversions of the same chords, different positions on the neck. And this gives you a really good overall compensation check end to end. So the second set of chords is... So I could layer that over top of the first set of chords, but there's some other things I want to sort of experiment with. So I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to let that initial group of chords play, and I will blow over it.